live in 1 second. Let's see. Okay, I sent it to you. Okay. Let me go ahead and kick it off. What's up, Dieter? Welcome to the live stream. I'll be kicking it off here in a second. Peace, Carlton. Sean, I think you're having some audio issues, video issues. I think it's frozen there. But for everybody that's in the chat waiting, we're going to be getting into the live stream here and, covering everything MicroStrategy. We're going to get into MetaPlanet today. Had some pretty big Bitcoin news. Sean will be joining back here in a second. He's just having some video and audio issues. But there's been a lot going on this week from the side of the government in the U.S. passing crypto legislation. We're going to get into the charts, MSTR versus MTPLF, and potential Elon Musk investing in Bitcoin as well. So make sure to stay tuned for all that in today's live stream. And let me go ahead and kick it off here. Just going to give you guys a quick update on the Bitcoin treasuries. We normally start with the charts, but Sean right now is having some video issues, internet issues. He's coming back. And we can check out the Bitcoin treasuries here. Hey, Sean.
Yo.
Gonna
having a little bit of technical difficulties.
No worries. Before we jump into the charts, just checking out some of the companies that bought in the past week. A lot of companies buying. Marathon, got Riot Platforms, a lot of miners there, Blockchain Group. A lot of companies still buying Bitcoin, even though Strategy didn't buy this week. And more and more companies, Vanity, Coffee, some smaller companies buying Bitcoin. So even though the price is going down, a lot of these companies are still accumulating BTC. And if you believe in a lot of these treasury companies, you should be happy if you're invested in any of these smaller treasuries and you're kind of using it as like a way to outperform Bitcoin or like a risky bet. Like H100, they accumulated quite a bit of Bitcoin just this week. If we look at them, I guess they don't. Well, they have the holdings over time here. Over the past month, you can see just in the past month they've gone from 247 up to 763. So you like to see that, especially while the price is coming down, because they're getting cheaper Bitcoin. So always good to see there. But yeah, we can. What's going on, Felipe? Yeah, a lot of companies. We're gonna be getting more into that later in the stream. But Sean, if you're ready, we can hop into some of the charts if you want to.
Yo. Yes, sir. Let me go ahead and share my screen.
Yeah, Figma is purchasing their private company, but they're pretty big tech company in the U.S.
1 second while I get this here.
I believe Figma is private.
Okay, so did you want to speak on Figma really quick before I get into this chart?
No, I was just reading the comments. You can go ahead.
Okay, cool. So looking at strategy, we're going to look at the Bitcoin price. We did get a pop today back up over 117. So the one thing to pay attention to is this trend line that we've been respecting since October of 23. You see that we bounced off it once, twice, didn't quite come back down to it, but third time's a charm. And look where we are right now. Give me 1 quick second. I have to step away. Just 1 quick second here.
Yeah, we're looking at MicroStrategy chart. Looking like let me see if I can zoom in and see this here. Yeah, we hit that resistance line at around 370. So as long as we hold that line, guys, it looks like we're going up. Not financial advice, but you know, go ahead and take back over there, Sean. I was just trying to.
Sorry about that. I had locked the door. I probably shouldn't have. But so you see that we are sitting on top of this trend line right now, and we are at a decision point. And what does that mean? That means that we're either going to break up or down, but right now it has held as far as support goes. And if you look at the RSI, we got too many down here. Let's get rid of this one. You see that we're really holding this 48 range. If you look back in the charts to see every time we had a touchdown here, we were around the 48 to 50 range, give or take a few points. So right now we're just sort of trading in this just channel, and we haven't really had any bearish divergences yet in this price action. So that's indicative of not having a drawdown versus a draw up. And we're looking at this on the 5 day. So if we zoom back into the actual price action, you see the moving averages are starting to expand and all point up into the right. And that's what you see in bull markets. And sometimes the 20 moving average, which is the green line, acts as a pogo stick. We bounce up, base out, and then bounce up again, base out. And we really haven't seen that bounce yet. But just coincidentally, if we zoom all the way into this, we can see that we came back down, almost kissed that orange support line almost perfectly, but just sitting right on top of that 20 moving average. So, tomorrow could be a big day for strategy, when we open back up. We have to just wait and see. Bitcoin has made some moves, I believe, after hours. So could we get a pop up? And the level to pay attention to in the short to midterm is that 440 range. If we get back a little above 440, that is going to be a continuation to the upside to where we see that next leg. And we pulled this for you guys before as far as this flag pattern. The target takes us up over $1,000 as far as MSTR goes, almost to 1,100. So that's definitely in the realm of possibility in what we see. And taking a quick look at Bitcoin at the current time it's recording is coming in at 117.3K. And the price action looks extremely healthy here too. And why do we say that? Let's just zoom into this price action here. This looks like this could be an inverse head and shoulders pattern. And we blasted through this dotted line here with this bullish engulfing candle. It just came back and had a back test. This is a textbook back test. So let's just see what the next week gives us. And this target takes us all the way up over 150,000, about $164,000. So could that be what we see next? So we just looked at Bitcoin really quick and strategy. And what we're going to talk about in this chat is MetaPlanet versus MicroStrategy, because that narrative has been swinging back and forth. This is on the 5 day. Let's look on the daily. So we have had a pop in the price action. As far as on the 6th, we went all the way down to 621 and got back above this moving average, but also have a gap here in the price and opened up around 680 and had a peak today before we closed on a 693 of 721. So there's a lot of excitement that the price action is returning. And are we out the woods yet? Possibly, but this could be some type of corrective waveform where we're looking at this peak. This could be an A, B, C, and this could be played out. This is pretty textbook, and we could be getting ready to maybe just have a retracement up, maybe to the $9, $10 range, maybe with a pullback to start that next leg and phase. But time will definitely tell. But we're going to look at a comparative here. Let's share this tab instead. And Let's look at 3350 divided by MSTR. And 3350 is basically the Japanese ticker. And as far as the price action goes, it's going to be all relatively the same when it comes to MTPLF. That's just going to be in US dollar denomination. So let me clean this up a little bit. But 3350 is the Japanese yen ticker. So if you just take the 3350 price divided by MSTR, it's roughly around 2. And you can see that we bottomed out way back in February of 24, and it's just been stair-stepping our way up. And why does this price action look bullish to us? Just because the moving averages, once again, we had the 20 cross over both the 50 and 200. And right now we had a back test of the 20 sitting right below it. Could we come lower in this comparative, say if MSTR takes off? Most definitely. But if we zoom in closer to this channel here, just so we can get a holistic picture, we can see that, we came in and established this support here, traded along the support for multiple weeks there, a back test. So the bigger question is, will we come back down to test this level once again before having a continuation to the upside? Now, let's get rid of this writing and zoom out once again. And looking at this on the higher time frame, we see that we have this sort of cup and handle that was forming and didn't play out, but this could be an Adam and Eve pattern that is in the works. And if we look at the RSI below, we're almost oversold in the MACD. So could we go lower to come back and retest this support line? That's a possibility, but we are in oversold territory. But let's get rid of that really quick. And looking at this price action right here, remember this is on the 5 days. So when you see some of these divergences on the higher time frames, it means that it's going to be a stronger move. So note the price action here. This looks like a double bottom, but if we zoom into this action here, we can see that when we bottomed out here, we came back up and put in a higher low. It was a slightly higher low, but still a higher low. And there is a bullish divergence because the price action went lower as this went higher. That's textbook's bullish divergences. And you see what happened. We came back up to this horizontal dotted line, and the technical target for this is not up this high. It's more like at least 33 to 50% of sort of like how you would measure an inverse head and shoulders pattern. If we blast it up, we would come back up to this 14 range, which from where we are right now, it's over a 457% move. Now, does that mean that we're going to get back through this? Not necessarily, because as you see right here, the last time the 20 crossed the 50, it was a failed move, but we didn't even get back up over the 200. But this time the 20s crossed over both, and both are starting to point up along with it. So this seems like we could get continuation up to that target. What we're looking at around the 12 to 14 in the comparative. So you take the 3350 yen price and divide it by the MSTR price, and that's sort of how you calculate this. So there could be a lot of steam left in the tank when it comes to the outperformance of MetaPlanet. Now, let's get off the charts and sort of just talk about what's going on with both of these respective treasury companies. We got MetaPlanet that there's a lot of speculation that there'll be preferreds rolling out. They have their investors meeting September 1st, coming up here in a few weeks. And that announcement is speculative, but it seems like it's probably a certain thing because you're seeing Dylan and Simon both tweeting about it, as far as what they're planning on rolling out and such. So why is this a big deal? The game of these treasury companies is to get to the preferred market. You don't want to always just hit the ATM because, yeah, you can have your argument whether you think the ATM being hit is a dilutive practice or not, because the Bitcoin per share is growing depending on how much Bitcoin they're buying. So there's arguments there. It's short-term dilutive for the price action until Bitcoin pops to the upside. So that is definitely something to note when it comes to how you look at hitting the ATM. But you got to have more than just one lever. And the ATM is one way for these companies to, get Bitcoin per share. But now the end goal is to how do you become accretive in doing so? So when you offer these preferreds, you can raise, capital that pours into these preferreds, and you no longer have to be dilutive to the common A shareholder, which that's exactly for, Stretch, for example, the latest that Strategy released. They raised, what was it, Aaron? 3 billion, $4 billion. I can't remember what their purchase was. Saylor's buying so much. But my point is they raised those funds because of the money that was pouring into the Stretch vehicle, and Saylor didn't need to touch the ATM at all for the common A shareholder when it came to that being 100% accretive for MS. So the 21,000 and 21 Bitcoins he just bought, like, people were complaining about, well, Saylor's hitting the ATM whenever. Well, these other vehicles is what other companies' end goals need to be, because they can now leverage those vehicles and hit the ATM on them, raise capital, whatever else they'd like to do, and take that capital and then prop up the common A, which is across the board accretive and non-dilutive at all. So that's what's going on that's why the MetaPlanet play is so big, because the Japanese market is yield starving. And, I don't think people really understand, well, how are they going to get up to like 210,000 Bitcoin and they're only buying like 500 here, 1,000 here. And yeah, if you're thinking of it like that, it's going to be very difficult for them to do that. But I don't think people are wrapping their minds around the importance of the preferreds. That's really the end goal for all these treasury companies, is to have some type of structured preferred offering to be able to no longer be dilutive to the common A shareholder and be able to raise capital in a creative fashion to where they can prop up their Bitcoin per share, but also not just keep issuing shares to ad nauseum to where the price will continue to go down. So I'll stop there. I did a lot of talking. What's your thoughts there, Aaron?
One thing for people to keep in mind when they do raise the funds, they have to still pay the dividends for the common A's that they're going to pay the dividends probably with the common A ATM. So that's also one thing to also keep in mind as these vehicles grow and they get potential trillions of dollars in them, like STRC. If it gets trillions, they're going to have to pay out those dividends, but that's going to probably come from the common stock. Or it'll be interesting to see how they get how MicroStrategy gets pretty. They can do it a lot of different ways, I think, in the future. But like you said, it's the best way, the most accretive way for them to raise funds to buy Bitcoin. So totally agree there. There's a nice website for people who are looking to invest in some of these different companies, Strategy Tracker. It gives you a pretty nice way to kind of just compare and contrast the actual fundamentals of all these companies. So you can see the stock price, NAV premium, their Bitcoin yield year to date. So you can see how fast they're acquiring Bitcoin and the amount of Bitcoin they have and the Bitcoin holdings. These are all the things you want to take into account when making your investment if you're going to be looking at a MetaPlanet or MicroStrategy or any of these other companies. You can even get, like AltBG, you can see they've been acquiring Bitcoin. When you look at the Bitcoin yield year to date, they've been acquiring at a pretty rapid pace there. NAV premium 3.61, but they only have 2,000 Bitcoin versus a MetaPlanet already has 8,000 or 18,000 Bitcoin. And you can see some of these other companies like H100, KULR. Strategy Tracker, you can check this out. When making investments into strategy, any of these other Bitcoin treasuries, you can, make informed decisions. And one thing I think is really interesting, I want to get your thoughts on this, Sean. The NAV premium is kind of all over the place for all these companies. And it's kind of like there's ways that people are saying that hitting the common ATM causes that to go lower, or it could just be hype or fundamentals. What's your thoughts on how, why these MNAV premiums are just kind of all over the place? Why some are, like AltBG is 4x, you got H100 at 3x, and Semler's, barely above a 1x. Yeah, what's your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with investor sentiment, because it's just a reflexive flywheel when it comes to sentiment. But I do see both sides of the argument where, it can dilute once shares are issued. Because if you just look at the law of numbers and just think of it from common practice of math, right? So if you have, let's just keep it simple and say Bitcoin isn't moving and say it's just trading in a range between 115 and 120,000 over the next 2 months. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I'm just giving this hypothetical, right? So Bitcoin's not moving and company A has 1,000 Bitcoin. And while Bitcoin's not moving, they're continuing to issue more shares and buy more Bitcoin. So yeah, they have the shares, which is they're issuing to the market. So that's temporarily diluting the price. But if you're looking at from a Bitcoin per share metric, you're becoming more accretive in Bitcoin per share because they're buying more Bitcoin. And they have to they have all this math done prior to these purchases. So they understand if they buy X amount of Bitcoin and issue X amount of shares, that's going to up their Bitcoin per share with this given purchase. So that's the accretiveness that, people need to look at. And it could be temporarily diluted just because there's more shares being issued and Bitcoin's trading sideways, or in some cases might be trading down. So you're getting the downwards pressure and you're issuing more shares. So naturally, if you have more shares of something and there's no other liquidity coming from anywhere, you're just adding more pieces of pie to the overall puzzle, and it's going to be slowly bleeding. And that's why Saylor and team have came out and gave those benchmarks. Okay, when the MNAV's at this, we'll do A. When the MNAV's at this range, we'll do B. And when it's at this range, we'll do C. They set that guidance because they can try their best to control it based off the actions of their issuance. But there's investor sentiment behind that as well that can help either propagate that to the downside or upside. So I think it's more of a factor of both investor sentiment and along with the underlying Treasury company strategy on how aggressive they're pushing new shares onto the market. Because like, for instance, let's just use MetaPlanet for an example. They have their 555 plan. So that's issuing 555 million new shares, right? So what would happen naturally if they issue all those at one time? Like, people can say what they want, but the price would go down very quickly because there wouldn't be any, crazy upside swing. In the event that there's no upside swing, if Bitcoin's trading sideways. Now, if Bitcoin's running from going up $5,000 a day or $10,000 a day and you euphoric bull market, then that could be extremely accretive, not only for Bitcoin per share, but also the actual share price, because now it's being propped up with something that's moving up very aggressively. So it's going to be reflexive to the upside for the common A. So I see a lot of back and forth on X and such, and you can have your own opinion and what, but I think they're both intertwined and conjoined as far as not only sentiment, the aggressiveness of the issuance or the non-aggressiveness of the issuance. It can help suppress to the downside as well. So, for instance, for example, MetaPlanet didn't issue any more shares a few weeks ago and didn't make a buy, and people were confused as to why that was because they went under a given threshold where, with their rules they've set with their executive staff, if we go under this MNAV, let's just pump the brakes for a minute and let's just see how this plays out, because the sentiment could drive it farther down. And we actually did see it drive farther down because a lot of people were looking at that 3 to 7 MNAV window. And as everybody, well, not everybody, most people are aware, we fell below 3. So they didn't want to keep hitting it aggressively and wait till the price maybe stabilized a little bit before they started back up and doing it in the fashion that they had. So, there's, different reasons for a season, right? But that's my take on the overall Bitcoin treasury strategy and why some companies operate in the way they do. Now, looking at similar, that could be, not that they're doing anything wrong with how they're acquiring shares, but they could have did a little bit better with their marketing strategy, to get more people behind the similar bandwagon. Not saying that no one's there, but there's just other factors that can go into play as to why they're trading almost in parity with their net asset value of Bitcoin.
Yeah, and I wish they had Sequans on here. I think they're actually trading underneath their MNAV. So yeah, I think I agree with a lot with what you said there. I think it's going to be interesting to see how these progress in the future. And I think all of these companies are really undervalued, especially Strategy, because they're only at according to this, they're at a 1.73x. I mean, that's not even a Bitcoin double. So it's like Bitcoin goes to $200,000. It's I don't know. It just seems like this is just super undervalued for Strategy. But I guess we can move on to the next topic. Tom Lee recently.
Just really quick,
Yeah.
before we transition. So, like, when people are talking about strategy, I think most people have to give themselves a higher time horizon, because strategy is a behemoth of treasury companies. And the question that you should ask yourself is, when Bitcoin does a 10x and goes to $1 million, what is that going to do for the sentiment and the net asset value that's driving the strategy common share? That's going to be the asymmetric swing to the upside. People are complaining about the size. The price action moving slow, and Saylor hitting the ATM. Well, they came out and released their benchmarks of when they'll do what they do. But fast forward 5-10 years, whenever Bitcoin hits that $1 million threshold, that's what you need to ask yourself. Like, what are those 620, 630,000? That's at the current day. They're going to buy more a week from now, a month from now, a year from now. They're going to keep buying, so that number is going to be a lot higher. But what is that going to do for the company valuation, with the premium on top of the company valuation? Because now they have these preferreds, where they have more optionality. These preferreds aren't even priced in yet. So when the market actually wakes up to these preferreds and they can start to use these preferreds in the same fashion that they were using the common A, that's what people need to pay attention to on a higher time frame. Now, looking at MetaPlanet got to the preferreds faster than Strategy has. Strategy's been doing their game plan for 5 years. So there's pros and cons about being the first, to where you're obviously going to get copycats, and that's what all these other companies are. But these other companies are sort of tweaking, seeing what Strategy's doing and sort of tweaking it, putting their own flavor on it. And Simon and team have a understanding that the preferreds are definitely sort of like it's not the end game, but it's like phase 2 for scaling, to get to scale of what they're trying to do over the next 2 years. And that's where all these companies are going to be focusing on. And once again, shout out to Saylor and team. They're being trendsetters. And there's one other thing that I wanted to sort of talk about when we were mentioning strike here, or stretch, I'm sorry.
Mhm.
So, there has been, the people that are in the space understand what this is, and it's strictly just like operates just like a dividend payout at the 8.5 to 10%, whatever they're gonna be paying out. So think of it like if it's a 9% annual yield, and people are like, well, how can they continue to afford to pay that? Well, they're looking at the delta of that 9% versus the CAGR for Bitcoin, which, being conservative, you can say it's 40% year over year. So if it hits 40 year over year for the next 10, 20 years, do the math on where the price is going, but they have that spread of about 30 points to their favor. So they basically can go ahead and do that forever and overly support those dividend payouts because they're giving themselves plenty of wiggle room. And, that's sort of how they came up with that metric. So, I mean, it's ingenious from team, Saylor and team, but that's how they can afford to continue to pay those out. So it's brilliant on their behalf. Shout out to them. That's all that I wanted to say on that.
Cool. Yeah, I definitely agree with all that. Go on to the next topic. Tom Lee recently was talking about Bitcoin getting bought by the U.S. government in a interview with Natalie Brunell, which is really interesting. I did a little chat GPT. It does look like some other companies have been bailed out by the U.S. government in the past when the market has gone down. So, yeah, I guess this would be a way for them to acquire the Bitcoin, put it on the strategic reserve, just acquiring Bitcoin instead of doing it themselves. I mean, I guess what would be I'm guessing what would you think would be the benefit of the United States government doing that? Would that be kind of like in a bear market when strategy is trading at a discount and they can kind of get the Bitcoin at a discount? Or I wouldn't think that the government would want to pay a premium to buy all of Strategy's Bitcoin. What do you think? What do you think Tom Lee meant by that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it could be something that the United States government definitely could have up their sleeve. Because if you think about it, I mean, Strategy is a public company, and they allow them to buy as much Bitcoin as they are. They could easily come in and sanction something, and there's been I think Semler dealt with some legal proceedings where they had to stop buying Bitcoin for some time. So they definitely could halt what's going on, but they're not doing that. But it would be from a federal government stance. I don't know everything, but just thinking about it conceptually, it would make more sense for them to pay in a one-time tranche, if you may, at a premium for Strategy as a company. And what that looks like, that can be devised a lot of different ways as far as what that acquisition looks like. But it would be better for them to buy at a premium from a one-time purchase versus trying to acquire 1 million Bitcoin and trying to find the liquidity in the, on the exchanges and making all those purchases because the price is going to continue to drive up and drive up and drive up. If they came out and made an announcement, that would cause global FOMO, and with other, powers that be, institutional FOMO, retail FOMO, it'll be FOMO like we've never seen it before. So in this way, they can ingest and acquire a company, get exposure to United States balance sheet can get exposure to that million Bitcoin whenever saylor and team get to that Nakamoto, and they pay for it at a premium. So saylor and team is happy, and saylor still has his personal Bitcoin bag, which he said he's never selling, and I'm sure a lot of his executive staff and colleagues do as well. So it would make sense to me for them to acquire a company like Strategy to get to that $1 million threshold faster, instead of just buying it on the open market, just because the price would eventually run away from them. Because how much at the current price, what's Bitcoin? What would $1 million Bitcoin? I mean, it's sort of hard to even calculate that, right?
Yeah.
The liquidity would have to be there on the exchanges, and there'd be like a pent up order book to the upside, and then the price would run away from them. So they end up actually paying out more doing it one way versus the other. I think the acquisition would be a little bit smarter for them to do.
Yeah. It's interesting to think about. It would definitely make sense for U.S. government, but I don't think Strategy shareholders would be very happy with Saylor. He sold all of his Bitcoin to the U.S. government, but I guess
It all depends.
Tom Lee, everything he's doing has been very interesting, especially with the Ethereum trade. So it's going to be cool to see how all that plays out as well. So.
Yeah, it definitely is something to note. But once again, what's in the fine print of what that acquisition would entail? Like, it could be a very accretive thing for shareholders. It could cause the common A to, we don't know how that could be written up. Maybe the United States government continues to acquire Bitcoin in creative fashion that doesn't affect taxpayers, after making the acquisition, and shareholders still get exposure to the upside on that. So it could be, yeah, you're right. So, shareholders could be mad, or it could be a great acquisition across the board. So, it all depends on how that merger was, signed on the dotted line.
Yeah, definitely. Anything else to add there? I was going to go into the Elon Musk speculation.
Yeah, really quick, just to comment on Carlton's way. $1 million Bitcoin at 117 would be 117 billion. Yeah, but they wouldn't be able to buy all $1 million at once. So, well, seizing your Bitcoin, you can't get it seized if it's in cold storage. So that's to that comment. So don't keep your Bitcoin on exchanges. Ledger, Cold Card, check them out. Don't share keys with nobody. But buying $1 million Bitcoin isn't just a simple like click the button and then the Bitcoin's in the wallet. Like, there's the order books will get filled up, and the orders have to get filled. So as that demand keeps getting built up and up, like, the price is going to continue to drive up and up. So they're not going to get, their cost basis isn't going to be a flat 117K. What that would be, who knows? It had to play out in real time for us to see, but it would definitely cause a massive price appreciation. Just because I don't think there's any exchange just sitting around with $1 million Bitcoin that's ready just to fill an order like that. So my 2 cents there.
Yeah, and if they announce that too, it's like they're announcing to the world they're buying $1 million Bitcoin. You're gonna have everybody go out there and just long Bitcoin 50x. You're gonna have other countries trying to buy it wouldn't just be very easy for them to buy $1 million Bitcoin, the price. And then they're doing it over 4 years, I think, what the plan was. So that would probably just cause a 4-year bull run for Bitcoin if it does get passed. Cool.
Yeah.
But let's go ahead and
you'd have China buying, Russia buying. You'd have every country having FOMO, every institution continuing to have FOMO. Yeah, the price would go up very quickly, and the order books wouldn't get filled right away.
True. So to pivot a little bit, this is a tweet here from Coinbase, and they posted this video, and it was like Bitcoin magic internet money, and it's a little video of, I don't know, some Bitcoin meme from back in the day. But Elon Musk actually reposted this. This is the this isn't the first time we've seen Elon Musk talk about Bitcoin over the past couple of weeks, and me and Sean were talking about this in one of our previous live streams about Elon Musk potentially being a catalyst for BTC, and maybe the second half of the year or maybe next year, if Tesla actually came out and bought a big purchase of Bitcoin. And I think that that could very well happen. I mean, Tesla already has Bitcoin, SpaceX has Bitcoin, and I think Elon Musk, even though he's not the most outspoken guy on Bitcoin, and he has, he likes Dogecoin and all these things, I think he actually understands the value of BTC, just being money that can't be printed. I think he's starting to realize that he can't control what the government does, because I mean, this is a guy who was basically best friends with Trump, and with that bill that passed, the big beautiful bill or whatever, is trillions of dollars of spending. He was publicly kind of denouncing it, like saying, well, we should not pass this bill, and it still passed. I think he just is kind of realizing that the power that he thought he has, he doesn't really have. And I think the only solution to all this money printing is like a currency like Bitcoin that really can't be controlled. You can't print more of it. And I think Elon's kind of slowly, I mean, I think he knows that, but like, I wouldn't be surprised if Tesla came out and like announced they bought $15 billion or $10 billion of Bitcoin, or maybe a couple billion. I don't know, but a lot of speculation there. But I just think it's interesting that we've seen Elon Musk talk about Bitcoin like a couple of times in the past week or so, and then we know that he also, with that American party, or the new political party that he came out with, they were talking about, or he tweeted and said that the new political party, the American party, would accept Bitcoin as like a currency because it is the most ethical currency or whatever. So I think it just should be on your radar. Tesla may buy some more Bitcoin. So they got a lot of cash.
Yeah. So one thing people are sort of forgetting about when it comes to Elon, the Bitcoin that he purchased, the 11,500 Bitcoin and some change that Tesla has on their balance sheet, was purchased back in 2021. Like, so he's been holding that for 4 years. So when you look at the wave of all these Bitcoin Treasury companies coming into play, Elon's been around for almost 5 years when it comes to putting Bitcoin on your balance sheet. And he also helped the frenzy of the 2020-2021 bull cycle when he accepted Bitcoin for payment at one point. And then I believe, don't quote me on this, I think when he retracted that was towards the end of the bull market. So you could, have the argument there that he has some power when it comes to, swaying markets. But mind you, the market wasn't as big as what it is now. So it takes a lot more liquidity, a lot more, influence on the masses, if you may, when it comes to swaying the Bitcoin price. But, a big purchase, a big announcement from a notable company like that, Tesla, being over $1 trillion valuation, would definitely set the tone for a lot of different companies. On when I say a lot of different companies that are on a similar scale. Because right now, nothing against any Bitcoin Treasury company, but these are mostly a lot of zombie companies that are transitioning to a full Bitcoin Treasury company, or their companies were sort of, failing to stay above water, and that's including strategy in that conversation. So, a big company that's forward thinking, one of the leading innovators in the artificial intelligence space, dealing with autonomous vehicles, SpaceX, the whole nine. That could definitely be the next wave for, I guess, the big boys come into play when it comes to treasury strategy. Now, does that mean that Amazon and Apple and Google and the others will just hop on board immediately? No, but eventually they will. And as the old saying goes, everybody gets Bitcoin at the price they deserve.
Definitely agree. Next topic is Trump passing the executive order allowing people to invest in Bitcoin with their 401k money. So this is interesting.
Let's talk about that. Just happened today, right?
Yeah, yep, just happened today. So I think this is interesting because I think the ETFs did that, but I think now they're trying to do Bitcoin and crypto through your 401k, which I think it's gonna be really interesting how all this is gonna work when it's all implemented. Like, are you actually gonna have Cardano like in a wallet in your 401k or Bitcoin in a wallet in your 401k? That's gonna be interesting to see how all these traditional finance places like Fidelity, BlackRock kind of implement this. I guess that's how I read it. Like they're gonna actually be able to have the Bitcoin in a wallet in their 401k, which is I think that'll definitely change the game. And there's a lot of money in 401ks. I think 9 trillion. So a lot of liquidity potentially flowing into Bitcoin and crypto in general.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see, if they're able to if they're able to open this gate to be able to send Bitcoin theoretically into whatever custodian, whatever brokerage account that you have, Fidelity, Schwab, or any of the others. It'll be very interesting to see how they treat like the tax implications. Because once you send your Bitcoin there, you're not getting it back. Let's just say that first and foremost. But will you be able to convert from a Bitcoin to a Cardano or Ethereum, or will you be able to convert into something that's yield bearing like Stretch? What that will look like? How will they do the KYC? Will you be responsible to do the tax implications? There's a lot of like questions that still aren't unfulfilled. This is still the first step, right? And it's probably going to be another, just if I had to guess, probably at least a year to a year and a half, maybe 2 years until that would get implemented fully. But it's definitely the step in the right direction. And another thing, giving more optionality to people to have exposure to some of these digital assets. If Cardano and some of these assets that really haven't performed this cycle and lack thereof last, some did, some didn't. With this level of adoption, it will definitely cause an influx in price appreciation and potentially year over year and decade over decade, depending on the asset and what the tech teams are doing. But it allows people to outpace debasement if these are successful. But just note that if you do that, you don't really own your Bitcoin. That if you send Bitcoin there, you're probably not going to be getting it back. So, and that's speculation. I think these brokerages are just doing whatever they can to get their hands on anybody's Bitcoin. But it is an interesting use case because if you are able to potentially get say if Bitcoin goes to $500,000 and you can send that over to, Fidelity and then convert it into a Stretch and get a 9% yield off that $500,000 and bypass the taxes, or I mean, there might be a tax implication. It just helps the payment rails go through a little bit faster. It's definitely interesting.
Yeah. And I think it might just be like a big middle finger to like Vanguard and some of these companies that won't let their employees actually invest in 401k because it's really dependent on the plan you have. Because I know some people I've talked to and some friends, like they wanted to buy Bitcoin through their 401k, but their company wouldn't allow them to because of their rules and regulations. But then some companies would. It just depends on your plan or if you're with Vanguard or Fidelity or whoever else. So it might just be like these rules don't make sense. There's no kind of guidance across the board. Some can do it, some can't. So I think it's a win for the space. So good for Bitcoin and good for crypto. And all this is going to be good for all the Bitcoin treasuries and strategy and MetaPlanet and everybody else. So
The unsolicited advice that I have for people that are experiencing that is leave your company. Don't stay, because what that's telling you is they really don't care about your longevity as a human being, and you'll be able to outpace debasement if they're not allowing you to invest in something that can outpace your debasement. Whether you're sitting on $10,000, $100,000, $1 million in your retirement account, your 401k, give an employer, if they're giving you your match, find a different company to go to. Because if there's companies that are allowing their employees to have the wherewithal to be able to invest in some of these vehicles, even today. There's a lot of gripes that people can get exposure through. They're given 401ks or given platforms to some of these companies like MetaPlanet. And Vanguard has been one of the culprits, if you may, that hasn't been as forward or friendly towards this space. So there's always optionality. Some people get comfortable in their day to day, but if you are in this space and understand where this space is going, and you understand, you do your due diligence, and you understand Bitcoin, the importance of what's going on in the digital revolution, then give yourself the optionality, like get uncomfortable to be able to take a step ahead, because this is only going to happen one time, and once it's done, it's done.
True. Yep. So you got any other topics you want to cover? I think that's everything I had on my list on my end.
No, I think we covered the main things for today. The main takeaway is that we just pay close attention to see what's going on, with what happened today with that bill that passed. One thing to note, we'll be interested in to see what happens in the 2028 elections, because this is an executive order that Trump is putting in place, and what legislation follows it to make it stay in place. Is it bipartisan, or is this just something that he's strong-arming to do just because that's something he promised? Salute to him if that's the case, but whatever bills get passed, you sort of want to make sure that they're bipartisan, because if there is another election and it flips to the other side and everything that is implemented gets done away, it's going to cause a lot of disruption in the space. So that's just sort of being forward thinking when it comes to tying your money up onto some of these platforms. So just be mindful of that. And just to reiterate, be your own bank, custody your own Bitcoin. Do not leave Bitcoin on an exchange. If you need to have it on there for trading purposes or liquidity measures or whatever you got going on, okay, cool. But majority of your bag, have your own wallet. And if you don't know how to use your own wallet, get on YouTube, check out tutorials step by step. You can handhold your way through this. So it's something to definitely just always, there's a lot of excitement going on in this space, but you have to always think out what's the next 4 years look like. And it seems like it's up to the right. I have that sentiment too, but last time I checked, you can't run for a third term. Now, will another Trump run? That'll be the interesting thing to see in 2028. But let's just enjoy 2025 for now.
I saw they were on the interview asking him. They were like, "So you're not going to run for a third term, right?" And this is like Fox News or something. Like they're asking him, "You're not going to run for a third term?" Like, man can't run for a third term if he wanted to. And they're asking him, like, it's interesting how people treat Trump, that he's the president. But
I don't know. A lot of things going on. A lot of strange conversations being had in certain corners, and it wouldn't surprise me if one of his sons ran.
Yeah.
It seems like, I can't remember if it's Donald Trump Jr. or Eric Trump. Who's doing the work with MetaPlanet? Which one is that?
I'm not even sure. I know he's two old ones.
Yeah,
Trump, maybe.
Yeah, and Eric Trump. One of those two, whoever's in bed with MetaPlanet. wouldn't surprise me if he did. And Donald Trump Sr. could then still be in office vicariously through his kids. So
That is true. That is very true.
it'd be the last thing with Trump on the ballot. So be interesting to see. And this isn't a political channel, so we're not, taking one side or the other. So we don't do none of that here. So yeah, that's everything that I have. So guys, we appreciate all your support. If you haven't did so, make sure you like this, share this, subscribe to the channel, follow us on X. We do this every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern, and we're not just blowing smoke. We do have some type of an announcement that's going to be happening here in the next week or two. Not week or two, month or two, sorry. So that's still coming, but we appreciate each and every one of you, and we will see you again same time next week.
See you guys.
Peace.